Mm-hmm. Well, there's a major development in the battle over, well, frankly, the entire theory of having a rule of law in this society. When yesterday, as the result of a habeas corpus hearing mandated by the Boumediene decision of the Supreme Court last year, a judge declared 5 enemy combatants were not, in fact, enemy combatants, and has demanded that the Bush administration set these Algerian men free.
Yeah, well, that's encouraging, but it's sure discouraging that they've suffered for so long because we violated some of these basic principles of human rights. And I know there's not reason to be too optimistic, about the new administration, but let's just hope that we have a little bit of improvement. At least hope it doesn't get a lot worse than what we had with the Bush administration. But so far, I'm not overly optimistic about that either.
Mm-hmm. Well, if the American people had come to their senses and elected you this November, what would you do with the men at Guantanamo Bay and at the various black sites around the world? I mean, I guess it goes without saying that you would do your best to set the innocent ones free, but there are, actual 9/11 conspirators and others like that within this mix. Do you put them on trial in New York City in federal court? Or
yeah,
what do you do?
I'd put them in trial under our federal laws and give them right to counsel and right, recognize that they have the right of habeas corpus, and people that there's no evidence to hold them, they should be released. And the greatest threat, and this is a principle known for a long time, is that if you abuse those principles of law and you let one guy go free, that's not nearly as bad as if you institutionalize the abuse of law for all of us, for all little things that has been done. And that's essentially where we are today, is that because we are frightened and we have to catch all the terrorists, we have victimized ourselves, so we have no right of privacy, and the right of habeas corpus is slipping away. And so I think that should be more important than the idea that one potential ally of a terrorist, happened to be sent back to another country. But I think I'll bet the information is available about these people in Guantanamo that it wouldn't take too long. I would think a month or two, you ought to be able to sort that all out and decide who should be released and who has enough evidence against them to be tried. I mean, we have a pretty good precedent for that because, they had good leads on the ones participated in that bombing of the towers the first time. They were arrested and convicted in prison. So that's the way it should be handled.
Mm-hmm. I saw in the news the other day, I'm sorry, this goes back to the military spending, Barney Frank apparently wants to cut the Pentagon defense budget and was being attacked by some Republicans. Do you anticipate working with him on that?
I haven't talked to him about it, but that is my argument, that's where, and I don't call it defense money, I call it military money, mm-hmm. because I think it doesn't help our national defense. No, I think that budget is huge, and that's where we should cut. It's easier to cut there, especially the overseas military expenditures, a lot easier than saying, well, we don't like the federal government involved in education and medical care. I don't think it makes any sense to pick on that first. But it depends on how they do it. Let's say if they cut $10 billion and take that and add some more and spend it all on another program here at home and didn't do anything to cut back, that's a little bit risky. But I've also taken the position that it's much better to spend that money here than overseas, even though I would prefer not even to spend it here at home. My idea of getting back to some common sense on the budget is if you can find one of these military appropriation bills that you can cut $10, $15 billion out of it, put half of it to the deficit and the other half to a program here at home, even if it's a program that we don't think is perfectly compatible with what our goals should be. But at least politically you would move in the right direction of cutting spending, cutting the militarism, cutting the deficit. At the same time, it would be tiding some of these programs over where we've taught so many people to be totally dependent on the government.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's probably only going to increase as we head into this recession. Of course, I'm sure you saw the numbers that unemployment is as high as it's been in, I think, 16 years. The stock market had another massacre yesterday. I think 400 and something, 500 points lost. How bad is this recession going to be, and how long do you think it's going to last, sir?
Well, it's bad. Some days it even shocks me, which is pretty difficult to do because I've been anticipating a lot of problems. At the rate they're making mistakes, which are daily, I would assume that this is going to last for a long, long time. But I've dated the beginning of this mess in the year 2000. I don't think we just went into a bear market here a year ago. I think the bear market started in the year 2000. If you look at the NASDAQ, it's pretty good evidence. And in real money, the Dow never went to new highs. But it was temporarily slowed up, the correction, with the housing bubble and the so-called financing that came from high housing prices. But that's all ended. So we're already into this thing that's 8 years. And people who invested in the stock market 12 years ago are just barely even. So it's been going on a long time already, and the unemployment statistics and all that we see now are just getting worse every day. If we don't do the right things and allow some of these corrections, allow housing prices to get down very, very low quickly, where people will say, "Hey, this is a good deal. I couldn't afford this, and I want to buy a house," and that needs to happen as quickly as possible instead of artificially keeping these prices high. I am expecting that it may be another 10 years or so before people say, the correction, the recession, depression has finally ended. It may not go like the 30s, but it can be, in a way, insidious and longer. And that is also very bad. Just think of what's happened in Japan here since 1989. They've been living with a very weak economy for almost 20 years. Their stock market was the Nikkei was 39,000 in '89, and now what is it, 12,000 or something? It's just a fraction of what it used to be because they never wanted to allow the banks to write off the value of their assets because it would look like the banks are technically bankrupt. So they never allowed the correction, and they're still struggling. So I suspect that we're going to do that, and probably what will happen is we'll destroy the value of the dollar. There'll be a currency crisis, and then we may be forced then to revamp the system, and hopefully we'll come up with sound money. That could end it sooner than this insidious slowing up of the economy where every single day you hear bad news and people keep getting poorer and poorer.
Well, and it seems like the national governments of America and Europe are getting together, and in fact, I guess the G20, I don't know if that includes, India and Brazil too, or what, but what are we to expect from these big meetings of all these central bankers and finance ministers? They keep talking about a Bretton Woods 2 or 3 or whatever number Bretton Woods we're on now. What do you think is going to happen there?
Well, I think they're going to keep working on it, and they'll probably not be able to come up with a new plan within a week or two. The other day when I asked Bernanke about this, he totally denied it, but I just don't believe him. I think that they have been talking about a new reserve currency because they know what we know, that the dollar reserve currency has ended. It just doesn't function anymore, although people are still holding dollars and hoping that they can get out of the dollar in time, but I think we're going to see the dollar get weaker and prices go up and interest rates go up. And the worse it gets, the more pressure will be put on them to have a new reserve currency. The trouble is they want to come up with a new fiat international reserve currency, like under the IMF and worldwide regulations and world government. And the battle is on between them and us. They want the big government. We want small government. We want honest money. We want money that comes out of the marketplace, and we want it to have real value to it, such as silver and gold.
Do you think it's fair for me to try to remain optimistic that if all these world leaders try to put together some sort of global central bank like that it just won't work? Or is there actually a danger that it will work, that they would be able to institutionalize something like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's probably the key question, because if they are successful, that means we're all going to be a lot less free, and we're going to all be a lot poorer. I don't think they always can have it work for a while, because in many ways, a lot of Austrian economists in the 1971 probably would have never predicted that dollar system would work for 37 years, and they got away with it. A lot of confidence placed in the dollar. It took a long time to make us a poor nation and an indebted nation. It just didn't happen overnight. So they might be able to come up with something that would work temporarily. But ultimately, history has shown that to really get a new start and to get confidence back in the system, you have to have a sound currency. They themselves may use gold if they become desperate and say, hey, look, it's not going to work unless we at least pretend that we're going to have some dollars held in reserve, for this new currency. They still do have a lot of the gold. The central banks still do hold a lot of gold, so they have to know what we know as well.